Morning, everybody. So we are beginning with the unit on psychopharmacology under CNS. And under this topic, we have the first session on antipsychotics. So we'll be learning the following things during this session. That is classification of antipsychotics. And then we'll be dealing with the pharmacology of the two main classes of antipsychotics. That is a typical and atypical antipsychotics in terms of their mechanism of action, their important actions, their uses, and the adverse drug reaction. So before we go into the pharmacological aspects per se, we'll just have a brief introduction to some of the general concepts related to psychiatric disorders. So I'm not going very elaborately into the psychiatric disorders because this is beyond the scope of a pharmacology class. You will have a greater understanding of these areas in your psychiatry classes. So, what are the types of psychiatric disorders? Can be psychosis, mood or affective disorders, and neurosis. So under psychosis, we have got cognitive disorders. Example is dementia, and which is usually because of some kind of a toxic or a pathological cause. And then we are having the functional disorders, example, schizophrenia. So please concentrate on this area, that is a psychosis, because we are going to deal with antipsychotics during this session. Then we have got the mood or otherwise called as the affective disorders, under which comes the mania, depression, bipolar mood disorders. Then we have the neurosis, under which comes the conditions like anxiety, phobic states, obsessive compulsive disorder or the OCD, post-traumatic stress disorder, hysteria, and so on. So psychotropic drugs are drugs which are having their primary effects on the psyche. Psyche means the mental processes. And these are used for the treatment of the different psychiatric disorders, which I have just shown you in the previous slide. So based on that, we can have antipsychotics, otherwise called as the major tranquilizers, which are used for treating the psychotic conditions, antidepressants, especially for depression, anti-manic drugs, otherwise called as the mood stabilizers, and anti-anxiety drugs, which are called as the minor tranquilizers. So all these classes of drugs you will be learning in the subsequent sessions. So today we are dealing with the antipsychotics, or otherwise called as the major tranquilizers. So these drugs, they have got a therapeutic effect in psychosis. So we describe two types of psychosis, that is the cognitive disorders and the functional psychosis. So antipsychotic drugs are principally used for functional psychosis, the psychosis which doesn't, there may not be a reason why this occurs. That's why it's called as functional psychosis. And the example of functional psychosis is schizophrenia. So we'll just deal with schizophrenia. It's one of the, so psychosis in general means they are kind of severe psychiatric illness with serious disturbances of the thought, behavior, recognition of reality, and perception. So under perception, what we mean here is that the patient can have delusions, hallucinations, and all. So what is delusion? Is like it's a fixed, unshakable, false belief that are outside the patient's culture. So this means it's a fixed and unshakable false belief. So the patient is believing something so firmly that it cannot be changed in his mind. So this is one of the examples. You can see how the person is so much believing that this is true. Then hallucination. Hallucination is an abnormal sensory perception without a source in the external world. That means there might not be a source, but the person is perceiving something. This can be visual, auditory, olfactory, tactile hallucination. You can see this person, he hears some voices in the head. Here, somebody is seeing some visual hallucination. The person is seeing so many books here. So these are all different types of changes in perception. And this is one of the characteristic features of psychosis. So they can have alteration of thought, behavior, recognition of reality, and perception. Then in schizophrenia, it's one of the common psychiatric disorders which we come across, and it can be seen both in young as well as the old generation. And this is characterized by two types of symptoms, which are called as the positive symptoms and negative symptoms. So you can see positive symptoms. Under that, you can see delusions, hallucinations, thought disorders, and aggressiveness. On the other hand, negative symptoms include an introvert behavior, poor socialization, and apathy. So these are two types of symptoms which can be seen in a patient with schizophrenia. So now we look into the pathophysiology of schizophrenia. So the why schizophrenia occurs is not clearly known. Various theories have been proposed, and we'll just go very, very briefly so that we can understand the pharmacology of drugs better. So one of the theories that has been proposed is called as the dopamine theory. It states that the reason for schizophrenia is a dopamine overactivity in the limbic area of the brain. So already you know limbic area is the area which is actually uh, dealing with the emotions in the brain. So it's a dopamine overactivity in the limbic area of the brain, and that causes schizophrenia. So obviously, the drugs which can be used for schizophrenia will be drugs which will be blocking the dopamine activity. Other theories also suggest that there is a role or overactivity of mediators like serotonin and glutamate also in schizophrenia. So hence, the drugs which are affecting serotonin and glutamate activity can also be used in schizophrenia. So the drugs that you're going to come across will be blocking dopamine receptors or maybe blocking a serotonin receptors principally. So as we proceed into the session, you will see how they are blocking and what can be the effects of such drugs. Now we come to the main area, that is the classification of antipsychotics. So this is the one of the questions which is often asked in your exams, and this you have to learn by heart. So principally, they are divided into two classes, that is classical or otherwise called as a typical antipsychotics and the atypical antipsychotics. Under the classical antipsychotics, they are further classified into the following, that is phenothiazines. Example is chlorpromazine. So I'm emphasizing on chlorpromazine because it is the prototype drug for this class. Others are thioridazine, trifluoroperazine, etc. Under the butyrophenones, you are having haloperidol, thioxanthines, example flupentixol, and other heterocyclics, example pimoside. So this is a classification, and often people have difficulty in learning these classifications. So at least you have to remember phenothiazines, example chlorpromazine, butyrophenones, example haloperidol, thioxanthines, example flupentixol, and other heterocyclics, example pimoside. At least this much has to be remembered for the classification. If you want to further the classification, you can even write the phenothiazines further divided into aliphatic side chain compounds like chlorpromazine, piperidine side chain, example thioridazine, piperazine side chain, example trifluoroperazine. Under the atypical antipsychotics, we just have a few examples to learn. Clozapine, risperidone, olanzapine, quetiapine, aripiprazole, ziprasidone, and so on. So at least a few examples, at least the first four at least should be there in your mind as an example of atypical antipsychotics. Now, as I told you, the chlorpromazine is the prototype drug for this class. So we'll be learning this drug elaborately. And this is a drug which can, if a question comes, write the mechanism of action, uses ADR of a typical antipsychotic, you have to mention the same thing which I'm going to mention under chlorpromazine. So it is one of the earliest typical antipsychotic which was used. So it is blocking the D2 receptors. It also has blockade on other receptors like alpha receptors, cholinergic receptors, and 5-HT receptors. But principal, the blockade is on the D2 receptors. Now we learn the actions of chlorpromazine on the CNS. So principally, we are looking at the its use in the CNS condition. So we will be looking at the CNS actions first. So in psychotic individuals, it will reduce the irrational behavior, agitation, aggressiveness. diminishes the disturbed thoughts and the perception problems like delusions and hallucinations. It can cause sedation and it can cause extrapyramidal side effects. So these are the two things that we would like to have in an individual who is having psychosis. And these are the side effects which can come across along with the treatment for psychosis, that sedation and extrapyramidal side effects. Other CNS actions include antiemetic action, and it can even precipitate seizures in some individuals. Now, what is the mechanism by which these are occurring? It is blocking the D2 receptors. So, if the D2 receptors in the limbic area are blocked, it will result in antipsychotic action. If the D2 receptors in the basal ganglia are blocked, it will result in extrapyramidal side effects. And when the D2 receptors in the CTZ are blocked, it will have the anti-emetic action. So these actions are being described by the D2 blockade in different parts of the brain. So as I already mentioned, extrapyramidal side effects can be one of the ADRs of D2 blocking drugs in the previous discussion. So you can see this antipsychotic like CPZ, because it blocks the D2 receptors in basal ganglia, it can lead to extrapyramidal side effects. Now on the CVS, it causes postural hypotension and reflex tachycardia. This is because of the alpha receptor blocking action. On the endocrine, it increases the release of prolactin, which can lead to galactorrhea and gynecomastia. It decreases secretion of gonadotropin, ACTH, growth hormone, and ADH. Now, the normal D2 receptor action is to increase release of prolactin and the increase the secretion of all these hormones. Now, when it is blocked, the reverse is occurring. Now, the metabolic actions include impairing of the glucose tolerance. That means the patient can end up with a hyperglycemia and even a hyperlipidemia. Other actions include sedative action because of H1 blockade. So these are the different actions of the CPZ. So when you're asked about the actions, you have to enumerate these one by one. Next one, you just have a comment on the tolerance and dependence because of CPZ. So the tolerance develops to the sedative and hypotensive action within days or weeks. So you're at a point when you know what tolerance means. So after some days, the patient will not be troubled by the sedative and hypotensive side effect. No tolerance, fortunately, develops to the antipsychotic action. So if the tolerance developed to the antipsychotic action, then we may have to increase the dose. But fortunately, that doesn't occur. But on the other hand, there is no tolerance occurring even to the extrapyramidal side effect in other actions. So tolerance is occurring only to two unfavorable features, that is sedative and hypotensive action. But tolerance is not occurring to the favorable antipsychotic action as well as the other unfavorable actions. There is no dependence that is occurring in the case of antipsychotics. Now, what about the pharmacokinetics? It has got unpredictable oral absorption. It has got a low oral bioavailability, and it is metabolized in liver and excreted in the urine and the bile. One of the problems with this drug is that it is very unpredictable T-half. So in different individuals, they can have different T-halves, like varying from 18 to 30 hours. So the plasma concentration of this drug is very, very unpredictable in different individuals. Now we look into the ADRs of the CPZ. And all these ADRs are important, and you have to mention this as mentioned in the slides below, because anything and everything is not just nausea and vomiting. And for the CPZ ADRs, you have to enumerate the way I am going to describe now. So CNS ADRs, it can be drowsiness, lethargy, mental confusion. You can say in one word, can be sedation. Aggravation of seizures can occur in epileptic patients. Under CVS, you can have postural hypotension and palpitation because of the tachycardia. Anticholinergic effects like dry mouth, constipation, blurring of vision, and urinary hesitancy. Endocrine, galactorrhea, and gynecomastia. Then you have a list of extrapyramidal side effects. So as medical students, you have to describe the different types of extrapyramidal side effects. You don't end up your answer by just saying extrapyramidal side effects. You have to mention the different types of extrapyramidal side effects to make your answer better. So first one is acute muscular dystonias. These are the first type of extrapyramidal side effects which can occur, and these are the muscle spasms of the linguofacial muscles like grimacing, torticollis and all. It will resolve spontaneously in few hours, and sometimes you might require to give a central anticholinergic, for example promethazine, to overcome this kind of a extrapyramidal side effect. Then another adverse extrapyramidal side effect is Parkinsonism, which is characterized by rigidity, tremor, hypokinesia, mask-like facies, and it occurs usually within 1 to 4 weeks of therapy. The management is to reduce the dose of CPZ, or you can change, given central anticholinergic, or you can change over to an atypical antipsychotic. When we discuss about the atypical antipsychotics, you will see the advantage of that, and then you'll understand this point better. Then akathisia. Akathisia is restlessness or compelling desire to move about. This occurs a little bit later in the therapy, around 1 to 8 weeks of therapy. Management is the same. That is, use central anticholinergics, reduce a dose, or change to an atypical antipsychotic, or even a benzodiazepine like diazepam can be used in this case. Then comes tardive dyskinesia, and they occur much later in therapy, much later. And these are involuntary facial and limb movements like chewing, pouting, etc. It may subside sometimes within months or years after the withdrawal of therapy, or it may just last lifelong. And the problem with this type of extrapyramidal side effects is that we do not have a satisfactory treatment for tardive dyskinesia. Next one is malignant neuroleptic syndrome. It is very rarely seen, and it is usually seen at very high doses. It is characterized by rigidity, tremor, hypothermia, a semi-conscious state, the fluctuating BP and the heart rate, and presence of myoglobin in the blood. And it's a very serious condition and can be sometimes fatal also. So you have to stop the drug immediately, and the symptomatic treatment, that is, you have to manage the hypothermia by giving the antipyretics and the cold tepid sponging. Then the drug of choice is IV dantrolene sodium, which is a peripherally acting skeletal muscle relaxant, or even a bromocriptine can be given. So this is similar to what you have seen in malignant hypothermia caused by halothane and succinylcholine. It's on the similar lines, and this is referred to as the malignant neuroleptic syndrome. There are some miscellaneous areas like weight gain, hyperglycemia and hyperlipidemia, cholestatic jaundice, and sometimes hypersensitivity reactions can also occur. Now, so that finishes the chlorpromazine, where we have discussed mainly about the mechanism of action, the actions, and the ADRs. The uses we'll be taking up commonly with all the antipsychotics. Now, the other typical antipsychotics. So this, I'm just going to mention only the features which are distinctive from the chlorpromazine. We're not going too much elaborately in each one of them. So all of them, they differ in potency. So there are low potency drugs which include mainly the aliphatic and piperidine side chain phenothiazines. And these low potency ones, they kind of produce more sedation and autonomic side effects. So they not produce that much of an antipsychotic action, but they produce more sedation and autonomic side effects. On the other hand, the high potency ones include the remaining phenothiazines like piperazine side chain phenothiazines and the other drugs, the butyrophenones, thiazanthines, and heterocyclics. And these produce more of the extrapyramidal side effects. They produce less of sedation and the autonomic side effects, but more of the EPS because they are highly potent on the D2 receptors. So we just discussed about a few drugs in particular. Triflupromazine, and it is mainly used as an antiemetic more than an antipsychotic. Thioridazine is one of the typical antipsychotics which has got minimal extrapyramidal side effect. This is mainly because it has got marked anticholinergic action, which kind of balances the D2 blockade. So this is one drug which has got the minimal EPS. But the problems with this drug is it can cause QT prolongation and cardiac arrhythmias, and it can interfere with male sexual function and eye damage. So this is a drug which is not really used, though it is having minimal EPS because of these risks associated with it. It is also not very popularly used. Then you have got trifluoroperazine and fluphenazine, and these cause less of sedation and autonomic side effects because they are ones with higher potency, and obviously they'll cause more extrapyramidal side effects. Fluphenazine is available as a depot injection, can be given by the intramuscular route. Now, I like to emphasize on haloperidol. This is one of the drugs which is very commonly seen in your wards. And this is a butyrophenone, typical antipsychotics. And it's a drug of choice for acute schizophrenia in agitated patients. So this is one drug which you will see many much being used in the casualty or in the wards when a psychotic patient in aggressiveness is brought to the ward. People you end up injecting a haloperidol injection, and one of the brands which is very much commonly available in and around our place is Serenase. This is the haloperidol brand which is usually available in your in your casualty. So other than schizophrenia, acute schizophrenia in agitated patients, it is also used for Huntington's chorea. So chorea is a dance like movements of the body, and Tourette syndrome. So Tourette syndrome also, many of you would have watched a movie like Hitchki, where you had Rani Mukherjee and she was suffering from Tourette syndrome. If you have watched the movie, you'll be seeing how she was behaving. So to overcome those kind of features, also haloperidol is given. It is available for both oral and parenteral routes. And pimoside is also one of the typical antipsychotics. It has also got the same kind of use, like it is used in Tourette syndrome. It's used for schizophrenia, but problem is it is having a high QT prolongation and risk of arrhythmias. So among the drugs that we have discussed so far, you can see most of the times we're using either CPZ or haloperidol for the treatment of psychosis. Otherwise, the other drugs do have problems like QT prolongation and other issues, because of which they are not very popular. Now, that finishes the typical antipsychotics. Now we go on to the atypical antipsychotics. We haven't taken up the uses of as uses of the typical antipsychotics. We'll be taking up the uses of antipsychotics together. So now we just shift on to atypical antipsychotics. Now, before we go into individual atypical antipsychotics, we'll just have a broad idea how they are different from the classical or typical antipsychotics. So already you know the main mechanism of action of classical antipsychotics is D2 receptor blockade, which is the cause for antipsychotic action. Whereas on the other hand, atypical antipsychotics, they are mainly blocking the 5-HT2 receptors, D4 receptors, and their action on the D2 receptors is very weak. So I already mentioned you in the theories that even serotonin has a role to play in psychosis. So atypical antipsychotics are mainly blocking the 5-HT2 receptors, D4 receptors. So again, the D4 receptors are not much concentrated in the in limbic area. So and the D2 receptors, they have got a very weak action. Now, classical ones, because of the high D2 blockade, you know, they are associated with the extrapyramidal side effects and hyperprolactinemia. So obviously, because the weak D2 blockade, atypical antipsychotics have lesser incidence of extrapyramidal side effects and hyperprolactinemia. These are the advantages of the atypical antipsychotics over typical antipsychotics. The typical antipsychotics are mainly effective against the positive symptoms of schizophrenia, whereas the atypical ones are effective against both positive and negative symptoms of schizophrenia. So whenever you are choosing the drug, the patient profile has to be kept in mind, the type of symptoms he has, and accordingly you have to choose the drug. It is also, atypical ones are also effective in patients who are refractory to the classical antipsychotics. Now we will After the general features about the atypical antipsychotics, we'll now discuss about individual atypical antipsychotics. So we're going to discuss a few atypical antipsychotics. So whenever you're asked a short note on atypical antipsychotics, first you have to describe the advantages of atypical antipsychotics, and then you come to the individual drugs. So first we take up clozapine. It was the first atypical antipsychotic that was used. It blocks the 5-HT2 receptors, D4 receptors, more than D2 receptors, and also has some blockade on the M1 and H1 receptor. So antipsychotic action is obviously because of the 5-HT2 blockade and weak D2 blockade. It produces less EPS and hyperprolactinemia. It can produce sedation because of the blockade of H1. It produces postural hypotension because of alpha blockade. It can cause anticholinergic actions because of M1. Now, this drug is used only as a reserve drug for refractory schizophrenia. Refractory means which is not responding to the use of typical antipsychotics. So it is only a reserve drug. It is not used on an everyday basis. What's the reason for that? It is because of its numerous severe ADRs like agranulocytosis. It can cause weight gain, hyperglycemia, hyperlipidemia, can even result in seizures with high dose, causes a lot of sedation, unstable BP, tachycardia, urinary incontinence, and myocarditis. So you can see there is a lot of unwanted effects on the cardiac system, on the blood, and also on the metabolic parameters. So because of all these unwanted ADR, it is kept as a reserve drug for refractory schizophrenia when it is not responding to other drugs. Then comes the risperidone. So you can see the same kind of blockade is there as you have seen in the case of clozapine, but it is again a more potent D2 blocker than clozapine. So you'll see more of EPS and hyperprolactinemia with this drug than clozapine. It also has produced a lot of risk of stroke in the elderly, but compared to the clozapine, it causes less weight gain and rise hyperlipidemia, and even the instances of seizures are less. So again, you have to choose the patient profile while using this drug. And it is better to prevent it, to avoid it in elderly because the risk of stroke. Then olanzapine, again, the same kind of blockade on the receptors, but here it has got more anticholinergic blockade. It produces weight gain, hyperlipidemia, the rise in sugar, blood sugar, stroke in the elderly. So again, this one may not be preferred in a patient who might be a diabetic or who has hyperlipidemia. It is not preferable in that. In those conditions, you can prefer risperidone. Okay, so and again in elderly also, again, this is not a very favorable drug because it can cause stroke. So you have to keep the patient profile in mind when you are choosing one of these drugs. Then quetiapine, again the same kind of blockade. It has got very sedating action. The weight gain is not much, but the problem here is the QT prolongation and the risk of arrhythmias. Aripiprazole, you can see there is no weight gain or hyperglycemia, but there is again a risk of QT prolongation. Ziprasidone, again, it has got a QT prolongation risk. So all these drugs which we have seen, quetiapine, aripiprazole, ziprasidone, they are having some advantage, but at the same time, they have got some disadvantages in the form of QT prolongation. So again, you have to choose it wisely, especially if it is a cardiac patient. Finally, we come to the uses of antipsychotics. So first and foremost use is in the functional psychosis, that is schizophrenia. So you have to remember they are only causing a symptomatic relief. That is, the symptoms like positive or the negative symptoms might be relieved. They will do not remove the cause the illness, because we really don't know what the cause of the illness is. And atypical antipsychotics are nowadays preferred as they produce fewer side effects like the EPS, and they also improve the negative symptoms. And usually a patient might be requiring a long-term or even a lifelong treatment. And whenever there's an acute attack of agitation, usually it is controlled by typical antipsychotics like haloperidol and CPZ. Other uses are in the case of organic brain syndromes or cognitive psychosis like dementia, though it has got a limited efficacy in such condition. It is also used for mania, bipolar disorders, And especially in mania, it is usually for acute mania, you can give a typical antipsychotics like CPZ and haloperidol. For bipolar mood disorders, which you will be learning later, you're giving using atypical antipsychotics. Some prefer for anxiety also atypical antipsychotics. As an antiemetic also, you can give a typical antipsychotic like CPZ. So other uses like intractable hiccup, tetanus, it is used to relieve skeletal muscle spasm. And for both these conditions, it is a CPZ. Alcoholic hallucinosis, Huntington's disease, Turin syndrome. For all these conditions, you're using haloperidol. So it's using, I've clubbed up all the uses of typical antipsychotics and atypical antipsychotics together. So if you're asked individually about the atypical antipsychotic use, you have to write functional psychosis, and mainly you have to mention the bipolar mood disorders and the anxiety. Whereas in the case of typical antipsychotics, you can mention the functional psychosis, you can mention about organic brain disorders, you can mention about mania, you can mention as an antiemetic, intractable hiccup, tetanus, and the others like alcoholic hallucinosis. You should not mention atypical antipsychotics for these conditions because it is not useful for these conditions. So when you are asked uses of antipsychotics, you can mention all these, but if you're asked individually about typical and atypical antipsychotics separately, you have to choose the respective uses only. With that, we have come to the end of the class. So you have to mainly concentrate on the classification of antipsychotics. You will prepare a short note on CPZ, where you will mention about the mechanism of action, the actions, different actions. Then you have to mention about the ADR, and finally you'll mention about the uses. So though I have written the uses in the end in this class, make sure that whenever you're writing a short note on CPZ, the uses should be there in the short note. If you ask a question on atypical antipsychotics, first you will mention about the advantages that the atypical antipsychotics are having, and then you will go on to mention about the different drugs, that is clozapine, olanzapine, risperidone, and so on, and then finally end up the short note with the uses. Many of you do not write the uses in the end. That has to be written for the complete answer. So with that, we come to the end of the class. Thank you all.